honestly, I met a lot of CEOs that week, and I never heard these three words spoken as often as I did that week, which is I don't know, right? I mean, the markets collapsed on April 2nd. The dollar fell quite a lot. People pressed the pause button on deals. There was just like a deer in headlights moment. I mean, gosh, what a difference a quarter makes, right? You would think nothing's happened. If you look at the global markets today, the US is what, $72 trillion? The Mag 7 continues to dominate, although, you know, you've seen a bit of shine come off. And the dollar is still, you know, very much the reserve currency and the trading currency of choice. So not a lot has changed from a kind of mark-to-market basis, maybe even higher. But a lot has changed in the last 6 months, if you will. So yes, you know, Sumit, baptism of fire. But I think COVID was that dry run that we all had, right? On how do you stress test for unknown unknowns? How do you hunker down? How do you diversify? I mean, you know, COVID taught us that you can't rely on one energy source, one tech source, one supply chain, one demand chain, right? You've got to diversify upstream, midstream, downstream, vendors, clients, suppliers, the whole works, currencies. So I think COVID was a bit of a dry run for businesses to diversify. And when April 2nd hit, it was pressed that diversification button even harder, especially on the demand side. So our chief economist, Tamor, said, TOTUS, talk about TOTUS, not POTUS, but TOTUS. So like, what's TOTUS? TOTUS is trade outside the US, TOTUS, as opposed to President of the United States. And trade outside the US is 89%. But we reckon that with, you know, less reliance on the US as the biggest market, biggest consumer market, countries are going to look at trade between Asia and GCC, intra-regional trade. In fact, intra-Asia trade's grown by the fastest it's been, right, in the last few years. It will continue to grow. ASEAN, intra-ASEAN, Asia to EU, Asia to UK, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, etc. So I think, and then the global South, of course, right? So I think the diversification play, both upstream, midstream, downstream, as I said, diversification of your vendors, I think that has exacerbated and even taken even more urgent stance. But you know what? The market's been flush with liquidity, whether it's the US or Asia. I think the Genius Act also happened, the Clarity Act, etc. I think the Genius Act changed everything. I think Trump pressing on that, and the US deregulation as well. So much has happened to change the speed of things, the adoption of technology, the speed of deregulation, the diversification of supply chains, and the forging of new relationships, if you will. I think certainly, Sumit, long answer, but yeah, a lot has happened. I think the weaponization of everything, you know, whether it's the weaponization of trade, weaponization of chips, weaponization of technology, weaponization of money, money flows, the dollar, etc. I think everyone kind of, you know, realized that anything can be weaponized and used against you. So you got to be on a lot more vigilant. And I think we're all learning to react quite quickly with imperfect knowledge. You're going to have to react. So yeah, I think what's, I think, pleasing in a way is that is how agile businesses have been. I've been amazed that, you know, I have clients that said they've pivoted their supply chains quite quickly, you know, in months, even if they're in manufacturing, for example, EMS manufacturing. I've seen customers diversify their demand chains, you know, quite quickly from the US only to, say, including the EU or Eastern Europe. So, you know, and I've just come back from Saudi and and Abu Dhabi. And just remarkable to see so much structural growth in both these GCC markets, but also how much FDI is going in. I'm going to India tomorrow, but India also has been an outperformer, right? So I'm pleased to see flows that hitherto never happened, but now you're seeing it, like Taiwan to India, right? China to the GCC, etc. I think it's good to see these new corridors being built, new relationships being forged, and also new compacts, right? I think the weaponization of everything and the end of a old traditional rules-based world that we knew means that those that want to continue in that rules-based ecosystem will stay, and you've got to find the stayers, create FTAs or create relationships, and move quickly. Can you imagine if China and India were to get together? That will be an incredible outcome. It's slower. I think Taiwan to China, you see more legs, I guess, because the Apple ecosystem's gone to India. So alongside with it, Foxconn, and with Foxconn comes the whole Taiwan electronic manufacturing ecosystem that's moved to India. I believe there are pockets of growth. You see the EV, from JSW has a good relationship with Shanghai Auto. I'm optimistic. I just think it will take time. It takes time to build trust, right? Mm-hmm. But it will take time. But intra, Singapore, Malaysia, with the SEZ, you're seeing a lot of activity. China to Malaysia, seeing a lot of activity. China, Vietnam, you still see a lot of activity. So I think north like Japan, Korea, also to Southeast Asia, you're seeing a lot of activity. So north to South Asia, there is a lot of intra-regional outreach and collaborations and trade. And I'm hopeful to see more between, India and the rest. Chinese businesses are incredibly fast at pivoting. They call, they have a word for it, involution. I had to look it up because I didn't know what involution meant in English. But the Chinese word "neijuan," right, is often sort of used as a sort of, it's very tough to compete in China. If you can survive China, you can survive anywhere. It's basically what they're saying. But it's very tough to compete in China. But having said that, you've got pockets of exciting growth, right? Whether it's deep tech, AI, there are apparently many other deep-seek moments to come. Biotechnology, because of the use of data and the very efficient use of models, small language models, for example, MCP. The use cases that they have on AI is tremendous. And then you've got the humanoid robots, the low-flying drone economy. My friends have taken the drones and said it was great. So you've got pockets of exciting growth, all driven by technology and fully supported by the government. And I think that's where you focus your growth on. I think consumer confidence is still tepid, and probably have to find more, jobs. The job market hopefully will pick up. And we're looking at maybe the property market to finally kind of, bottom out in 1 or 2 years, probably more like 2 years if you're talking about the whole country. But as I said, the pockets of recovery already in places like Shanghai.